He didn't invent finance. He didn't invent investing. He invented lying. And the world fell for it. Charles Ponzi came to America in 1903. He arrived on a ship, like so many others. He had hope in his heart. He had $2.50 in his pocket. He was a man with charm. He had a desire for a much better life. He did not want to earn it slowly. He wanted to find a shortcut. This desire for easy money would define his story. It would also bring ruin to thousands who chose to believe in him. America was the land of opportunity. Ponzi saw it as the land of easy marks. He was an immigrant from Italy. He wanted the success he saw all around him. He just didn't want the hard work that came with it. He tried many jobs in his early years. He worked as a waiter. He worked in a bank. He spent time in jail in Canada for forging a check. Each failure was a lesson in what not to do next time. He learned people wanted to believe in something simple. They wanted a promise to solve problems without effort. He just needed the right promise to sell. One day he stumbled upon an idea. It involved something called an international reply coupon. These were small pieces of paper. You could buy them in one country. You could send them to another country where they could be exchanged for postage stamps. Ponzi noticed currency changes after the war. A coupon bought cheaply in one place could be worth more somewhere else. He saw a gap. He saw a way to make a profit. He claimed he could exploit this difference for enormous returns. It sounded clever. It sounded legitimate. The story he told was a masterpiece of simple deception. He promised investors a 50% return in just 45 days. That is a promise no real business could ever make. But in a world recovering from war, people were desperate for good news. They were tired of struggling. Ponzi spoke with a calm confidence that was hard to resist. He did not look like a criminal. He looked like a financial genius who had discovered a secret. People wanted to believe his secret could become their fortune, so they gave him their money. They gave him their money. Ponzi established the Securities Exchange Company to look official. He opened a nice Boston office. He hired agents to find more investors. The whole operation looked legitimate and thriving, a stage set for financial wizardry. The truth was much simpler and criminal. Ponzi barely traded any coupons. Logistics of buying and shipping millions of coupons were impossible. Instead, he took money from new investors. He used fresh cash to pay earlier investors. As long as new money flowed, he could keep paying old investors. Word of Ponzi's incredible returns spread like a fire. It started with a few investors in Boston. They put in their money. A few months later, they received their principal back, plus a huge profit, just as promised. They were overjoyed. They told everyone they knew. Soon, lines of people began to form outside Ponzi's office. They were ordinary people. They were factory workers. They were police officers. They were clerks. They took their life savings. They mortgaged their homes. They borrowed from friends. The media played a significant role in fueling this frenzy. At first, newspapers were skeptical. But as Ponzi continued to pay out, some reporters began to change their tune. They wrote glowing articles about this Italian immigrant who had discovered the secret to wealth. He was hailed as a financial wizard. He was hailed as a modern Midas. Ponzi himself was a master of public relations. He gave interviews. He posed for pictures. He always appeared calm and successful. He bought a large mansion. He drove a fancy car. He looked exactly like a man who knew how to make money. The public hysteria reached a fever pitch. People didn't just want to invest. They felt they had to invest. It was a feeling of missing out on the opportunity of a lifetime. Investors were not just clients. They were believers. They defended Ponzi fiercely against any doubters. When one financial writer published an article questioning the math behind the scheme, Ponzi's supporters were outraged. They saw the writer as a fool who was trying to ruin a good thing. The power of group belief was stronger than the power of simple arithmetic. This is where human nature played its part. Greed was certainly a factor. Who wouldn't want to double their money in a few months? But it was also about trust and hope. People trusted the newspapers. They trusted their friends who were getting paid. Most of all, they trusted the confident man in the fine suit who promised them a better future. The collective desire to believe was so strong that it silenced the small, quiet voice of reason that might have asked, "Is this actually real?" For a time, the answer everyone wanted was yes. To understand how the scheme worked, you do not need a degree in economics. You just need to picture a simple pyramid. At the top is Charles Ponzi. Below him are the first few investors. They give him their money. To pay them their promised profits, Ponzi needs to find more investors and form a wider layer below them. He takes the money from this second layer to pay the first layer. Now, both the first and second layers need to be paid. So he must find an even larger group of new investors for a third layer. This process is the engine of the fraud. The money is not being invested in postal coupons or anything else of value. It is just being moved around. Money from investor C is given to investor A and called profit. Money from investor D is used to pay investor B. Money from investor E is used to pay investor B. As long as more people are entering at the bottom than are cashing out at the top, the system appears to work. It feels like a money-making machine. But it is a machine that runs on nothing but new fuel. If that fuel ever runs out, the entire machine seizes up and collapses instantly. Ponzi made it all look professional. When someone invested, they received a promissory note. It was a formal document, signed by Ponzi, promising to pay back the principal plus interest at a specific date. These notes gave people a sense of security. It was a contract. It felt official. People would hold these pieces of paper, believing they represented real value and a share in a brilliant international business. In reality, they represented only a claim on the money of future victims. The notes were promises backed by other, later promises. The fatal flaw is mathematical. A scheme that promises to pay 50% profit every 45 days requires an impossible amount of new money to sustain itself. The number of investors needed grows exponentially. Soon, you would need to recruit the entire population of a city, then a state, then the country. The pool of potential new investors is always finite. At some point, the inflow of new cash will slow down. It will no longer be enough to cover the massive payments owed to the existing investors. This is not a risk. It is a certainty. The only question is when it will happen. For months, the Ponzi machine ran smoothly. The money poured in faster than it had to be paid out. By the summer of 1920, Ponzi was taking in an estimated $1 million a week. He was living like a king. His investors adored him. But even in the midst of this success, the cracks began to appear. A few people with knowledge of finance started to ask pointed questions. To generate the profits he was paying, Ponzi would have needed hundreds of millions of postal reply coupons. The United States Postal Service confirmed that nowhere near that number were in circulation in the entire world. It contradicted his entire story. The Boston Post, the same newspaper that had once praised him, began a deep investigation. They questioned the logistics and the source of the money. Ponzi invited journalists to examine his confusing, incomplete books, sued a writer for libel, and played the victim. For a little while, his performance worked, but pressure from banks and regulators was building. When a state official ordered Ponzi to stop taking new deposits, it was a critical blow. The inflow of new money, the lifeblood of the scheme, was cut off. At the same time, investigative articles caused panic. A small trickle of people asking for their money back quickly turned into a flood. Suddenly, everyone wanted to cash out at once. This is the moment every Ponzi schemer dreads. The pyramid was about to fall. The bank run was the beginning of the end. At first, Ponzi managed the crisis with his usual flair. He calmly served coffee, donuts to the waiting crowd, paid out cash to those at the front of the line. This temporarily restored some confidence. But he could not sustain it. He was paying out millions. No new money was coming in. He was trying to empty an ocean with a bucket. He was simply running out of cash. On August 12, 1920, federal agents finally moved in. They audited his books and found what the skeptics had suspected all along. The company was hopelessly bankrupt. Ponzi owed his investors millions more than he had. The vast fortune was an illusion. The money was gone. paid out to early investors, spent on Ponzi's lavish lifestyle. The postal coupon business was a fiction. The entire enterprise was a hollow shell. The genius was just a common fraud. The arrest of Charles Ponzi was a massive public event. The man celebrated as a hero was now paraded as a villain. The public's adoration turned to rage. The same people who had praised his name now cursed it. They had lost everything: their life savings, their homes, their hopes for a better future. It was a brutal lesson in the high cost of easy belief. Ponzi was charged with multiple counts of mail fraud. After a series of trials, he was convicted and sent to prison. He never showed much remorse. After serving his sentence, he was deported back to Italy. He tried other schemes, but he never recaptured the magic. He died in poverty in a charity hospital in Brazil in 1949, a world away from the Boston mansion where he had briefly lived as a king. Charles Ponzi did not invent the pyramid scheme. Frauds like it had existed before him, but the sheer scale and audacity made his name forever attached to the trick. Today, we call it a Ponzi scheme. The name itself is his true legacy. It serves as a permanent warning. It is a shorthand for any fraudulent investment that pays early investors with money from new ones. The name has entered our language, our laws, our history books. After Ponzi's collapse, regulators and lawmakers took action. They created new rules to protect investors, required more transparency and disclosure, and later established the Securities and Exchange Commission to police markets. The story of Charles Ponzi became a case study taught in business schools and law schools. It was a clear example of how greed, trust, a good story can combine to create a financial disaster. The pattern he established has been repeated countless times since. The details change, but the core structure remains the same. Sometimes the story is about rare earth metals, foreign real estate, complex new technologies. Bernie Madoff ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history. Not with postal coupons, but with sophisticated-sounding stock market strategies. He fooled Wall Street experts for decades using the very same principle: pay the old with the new and maintain the illusion of success for as long as you can. Ponzi's story is more than a historical footnote. It is a timeless parable about human psychology. It shows how easily we can be misled by the promise of something for nothing. It reveals our tendency to trust charismatic figures, especially when they tell us what we want to hear. The scheme worked not just because of Ponzi's lies, but because of the public's willingness to believe them. He sold a dream, and for a short time, thousands of people bought it completely. More than a century has passed since Charles Ponzi built his house of cards. We have more laws. We have more information at our fingertips. We have the historical record of his failure and many who followed. We can search online for warning signs. Financial literacy is taught more widely, and yet the echo of Ponzi's scheme is all around us today. It wears a different set of clothes. It speaks a new language. Today's schemes talk of cryptocurrency, decentralized finance, exclusive algorithms, influencer-backed projects. They use social media to create hype and social proof, the same kind of validation newspapers once gave Ponzi. A slick website, a few celebrity endorsements, an illusion of legitimacy. People see others getting rich on social media. They feel the fear of missing out. The promise is the same: impossibly high returns, guaranteed with little risk. The mechanics are the same. Early believers are paid with later believers' money. The tools have become more sophisticated. Scammers reach millions instantly online. Fake testimonials, manipulated online reviews, complex jargon designed to confuse. But the vulnerabilities they exploit are as old as time: hope for a better life, fear of being left behind, trust in what looks professional. The desire to believe the shortcut is real. So we are left with a sharp, uncomfortable question. If Ponzi's story is known and his name a warning,